What's up, guys? Welcome back to Read and React. Today we are going to be discussing 5 of my favorite running back values in this year's draft. Now, when I say value, I'm not talking about great value at Walmart or the value menu. I'm talking about finding you value in the later rounds of your draft to help you win your league. Because let's be honest, who doesn't love a good value pick in the late rounds? Now, when we say value, that can have a lot of different meanings. I mean, technically, you can go as granular as saying, oh, if he outperforms his ADP, he's a value. You would be half right. While that does technically count as a value, what doesn't come through is what you paid for to get there. So, for example, running back 30 only finished 2 points per game ahead of running back 40 last year. Now, you may say, oh, he was drafted RB 37 but finished RB 34. That's not really going to be fantasy relevant. So, what we're looking for here today is guys who will make a significant difference and be a true value and not just outperform their ADP, but genuinely contribute and help you win your leagues. So to me, what that means in drafts practically is that good values are typically either being drafted closer to their floor than their ceiling on lower upside guys where their range of outcomes is a little more limited, or far away from their upside where the range of outcomes is a little bit wider. And typically with these those are kind of the low risk, high reward guys. And so what you see is a lot of time they may be drafted smack dab in the middle of their range of outcomes, but when they're already being drafted so late in the draft that if they don't turn out, you're out a bench warmer, it's really worth paying up for that. So there are a few things that can help us find running back value year over year. So the first one is a running back two on a great offense or a committee with a clear role, such as a receiving back or goal line back. Those are kind of the two main roles you're looking for. You're not looking for the 12 carries but no goal line carries guy. You're not looking for kind of that Ken Walker archetype. You're looking more for the Zach Charbonnet, where he's hemorrhaging those touchdowns and just getting the more valuable touches. Another example in this case, a running back two on a great offense was David Montgomery on the Lions. I mean, he was consistently a great value because you could get him in later rounds, and he would almost always overperform because of the work he was getting on the Lions, which was a very high production offense. We'll actually get into him later. So the second one, and this is less of a value and more so just a way to approach your drafts, is a perceived lack of upside. This is typically seen when we have a running back who doesn't catch a lot of passes and a lot of the times is on a more pass heavy offense. So someone like Derrick Henry, who is a bit of an outlier in this archetype but does still fit it due to his lack of pass catching. A more practical example for this year would be a Javonte Williams or a Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams has been a victim of this almost every year where because he doesn't catch passes and because the Rams love to pass the ball, his ADP gets pushed way down. Now, that's not to say that these guys are going to go in and, you know, vie for a RB1 spot. They're not going to go put a top three finish together. But what you can get a lot of times is due to the lack of that finishing ability, especially in kind of those mid-tier running backs from realistically running back 12 all the way down to running back 20, you can see them get pushed down the draft board because they don't have that upside. When in reality, in the right team and right build, they can be very, very valuable. So the biggest one that you look at for kind of the crazy upside year to year is an ambiguous backfield, or if there's the possibility that someone takes over for someone who has underperformed. So again, this is the biggest one because a running back will go from a late round draft pick to the clear RB1, clear cut starter. So an example of this from last year is Rico Dowdle. I mean, he took the job from Chuba Hubbard and never gave it back, produced consistently in this back half of the season, and ended up being a great draft pick. Another example, actually on the other side of this, would be Travis Etienne, or Etienne now, I guess is what he wants to be called. Because what can also happen is if there is a perceived committee or a situation where they think the starting job may get taken, guys can get pushed on the board. So you do kind of have to be careful and look at it from both sides to make sure you're not discounting the wrong guy. But that can be a big thing when finding value later in drafts. In the end, value is all about opportunity cost, which is what are you giving up to draft this player instead of an alternative, which typically in drafts is why am I drafting this running back and giving up this receiver or this tight end or this quarterback? The tight end and quarterback one can be a little tough because, you may be looking at the 15th running back off the board with the ability to get the first or second tight end, which is a kind of tough cookie to swallow, but that's kind of what we're looking at here is okay, if I draft this guy, who am I giving up? And that's where you are looking for the value. Because if you can draft the guy who ends up being a high upside league winner instead of the guy who ends up being a mid two spot ADP outperformer, you're cooking and you just got yourself a great draft pick. So before I get into the players, a few disclaimers. Value here does not mean that these guys have top 6 to 10 upside. There's one guy later here who I'll mention that does have kind of that higher ceiling, but most of these guys, what you're looking at is for them to jump up one tier. So what that means is in a 12 team league format, you're looking for them to go from RB 24 slot like all the way down to 30 up to a like top 18 to 16 running back. And once you get past RB 30, them breaking into the top 24. And keep in mind too, at the end of the year, you may see that a guy finished RB 25, which, if you drafted him RB 30 may not look like a lot. However, what is also possible and what happens a lot of times with these values is the point distribution isn't very even. So you can have a guy who finishes RB 25 averaging 13 points per game, but he didn't really reach a valuable point until week 8. And so if you look at his game log, it'll be 6 to 8 points, and then he'll explode for more of that 15 to 18 point range. So especially with those backfield takeovers, even though, again, on the ADP, it may not look like they outperform it by that much, depending on the point distribution, they can be very valuable. So also, just for clarification, the ADPs that I am using for reference are pulled off of Fantasy Pros. They have a kind of hybrid composite ADP of all league sources. Obviously, every draft board is going to look different from ESPN to Sleeper to Yahoo to whatever there is out there. So you definitely want to be aware of your draft board and where guys are projected to go, because whether you like it or not, that is going to influence where people get drafted. So, for example, if a guy is projected 50th overall on Fantasy Pros, if there's one source where he's put at 40 and one where he's put at 60, on the one where he's ranked 40, he might be in a void because people are probably going to take him earlier because the name is there. It's just a psychological thing. So with that, let's get into our first player. The first one up is the man who honestly could be the mayor of Value Town. I mean, seems like every year this guy's ADP doesn't get any higher and he just continues to outperform over and over and over. And that man is David Montgomery. So the thing with David Montgomery is currently he's going at RB23, 53rd overall roughly, and that gives you about a 5th or 6th round draft price. So the thing to keep in mind with that is you can have a hero running back, both receivers, and a flex wide receiver and get him at your RB2, which I think would be an amazing build. It also is great for 0 RB, where you may want to target an elite tight end or an elite quarterback for the value there. Overall, he just offers a really high floor. He may not be the guy that's going to finish top 12. I don't think that's crazy to say, but where he is going to find value is the fact that he is now the lead back in a Houston Texans offense who can be good. We have seen them perform over time. They just need to get back to where they were. Last year, they were horrible at the goal line. Woody Marks couldn't do anything, and David Montgomery lives at the goal line. That was his role on Detroit. Last year, he finished RB27 in what was safely his worst finish. Prior to that, his lowest finish on the Bears was RB24. And so you're getting him at RB23 at his absolute lowest possible outcome. And here's the thing, if he gets the main touches and a lot of touchdown equity, it's not unreasonable to think that he climbs up into the top 18, top 15 running backs. And plus, just look at the guys going around him. Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, who are both extremely risky. Judkins is in a horrible offense. Henderson, you don't really know how much work he's going to get. And then Jameson Williams and DJ Moore, who are both super shaky receivers. So you can get a super safe RB2 as an alternative to these guys and really secure that RB2 spot for your team. The next guy we're going to be talking about, his main issue is, and probably always will be, injuries. When he's on the field, he produces. He's shown it time and time again that he can produce at a meaningful value every year. He just can't seem to finish out the year, which I know when you're drafting does make it scary. But one, injuries, even though he has a history, are not a sticky metric that we can say every year, yep, this guy is going to be over under 1.5 injuries, or he's going to be over under 3.5 games missed. It's not something that is that predictable. So the guy I'm talking about is J.K. Dobbins, going off the board at RB34, 101 overall, 10th, 11th round price. You are paying literally nothing for him. He, again, is not similar to David Montgomery, not going to be an elite starter, but he is a good insurance and floor play if you went really light at running back or are worried about your other options. Say you draft Jadarian Price, who, as we've seen historically, rookie running backs take a while to ramp up to the league. Draft J.K. Dobbins, and you have yourself a 12 point per game starter while you wait for Price to get his workload up. And when J.K. Dobbins immediately gets hurt in, I don't know, week 8 to 10, Jadarian Price will be sitting there waiting for you, if not before then. So that's where I really do like J.K. Dobbins, is as a good depth and floor play. And I know in the late rounds you have to play for upside, but if you've played the upside game too early or you are feeling shaky about running back, J.K. Dobbins is a great blanket to help you sleep at night. Last year, he was running back 24 in points per game, so he was producing as an RB2 last year before he got hurt. He averaged 5 yards per carry. He has a very good offensive line and a solid offense in Denver. And RJ Harvey did not show out enough to take the lead back role from him. RJ Harvey could not run the ball. They went out and got another running back in the draft, which could that hurt Dobbins' value long term? Yes. However, as I just mentioned with Price, rookies take a while to get accustomed. So you are getting a team running back 1 on a solid team at a running back 3 or 4 cost. So the health is baked into his value. Again, you are taking on none of the risk because he's going so low. I just mentioned he produced at running back 24 last year. So you just have all this upside sitting on the table and you are getting him at his floor. And if he gets hurt, he either takes up an IR spot or you drop him. Like, that's the beauty with him, is that he is an easy drop and an easy guy to get rid of who you won't feel any attachment to. And you can get those early points in the year when you need them and when your team is still kind of finding its way. And just look at the guys he's going around. Kyle Monangai and Wan'Dale Robinson. I like both these guys as players, but you can either get J.K. Dobbins, who is the lead back on his team, or Kyle Monangai, who maybe sort of has a chance to kind of get some work on the Bears. He'll have a role, but it's very unclear what it's going to be. And Wan'Dale Robinson, who is the RB2 on a team who has had one of the worst passing offenses in the league last year, which we do expect to be better. But again, you are buying a solid RB2 until he gets hurt over these kind of riskier plays. All right, the next guy, the ultimate ambiguous backfield, high risk, high reward player, is a guy who's been in the league for I think 2 years now, and I don't know that he has played in a regular season game, and I'm talking about Jonathan Brooks, one of the most talked about players in the industry this year, and that's because of his low cost relative to his upside. He currently goes off the board at RB39 and in around pick 112. So you're getting him in about the 12th round of drafts, which is essentially free money. You're basically just printing off dollar bills at this point. And the thing with Jonathan Brooks is he has proven to be a good receiving back in the action he's gotten. He has consistently seen that work, and he has great college tape if you go and watch him play in real time. He just hasn't had the opportunity yet due to 2 ACL injuries, which is unlucky at worst. I mean, he tore both ACL. He tore the ACL in both knees in separate incidents. That's not an indication of poor stability or poor health. That is an indication of a player who has just gotten unlucky and who has been pushed on the draft board because of this. Now, I love Jonathan Brooks as a player, but part of the reason he's such a good value is because Chuba Hubbard does not project to do well this year at all. Chuba Hubbard last year was not good, and Rico Dowdle took his job from him halfway through the year. And now they just let Rico Dowdle walk. That's not a vote of confidence in Chuba Hubbard. To me, that shows that Jonathan Brooks is primed for a breakout year. Chuba Hubbard had no runs of 15 yards or more last year, and just overall in most metrics is bottom 10 in the league. Jonathan Brooks had the draft capital. He was a second-round pick who just simply has been wrecked by injuries. And again, you're getting him in the 12th round. You're getting him as probably your 5th or 6th bench player. If he comes out in 6 weeks and is doing nothing, or Chuba Hubbard for whatever reason lights the world on fire, which would light multiple people on fire as well, then drop him. He is the lowest commitment of anyone on this board, and yet he probably has the highest upside of anyone on this board as well. And look at the guys going around him. Xavier Worthy, Matthew Golden, and Aaron Jones. Now, this is, again, not to say I hate these players, but you are looking at a guy who could be an elite running back in a solid offense. And again, that receiving upside is the key here. He's young, he's explosive, and he catches passes. Those are the three things that you want in a unproven running back. Aaron Jones, love him. He's old. And are you really going to draft a floor play in the 12th round? No. Matthew Golden, again, love him. Think he could have a breakout, but he could also just get overtaken by Jaden Reed. And in Green Bay, we haven't really seen an elite wide receiver produce, and Christian Watson appears to be in that position. Xavier Worthy, again, shaky Chiefs offense. And so to me, Jonathan Brooks, of anyone on this list, has the ability to go from a kind of bottom feeder running back where he's basically going for free to a top 20 option by the end of the year. Rachaad White, Kenneth Gainwell, even Dobbins, love them. Love them for their upside, but those are all guys that you're kind of playing the point distribution game on. You're praying that, okay, they can get me 6 to 8 good weeks and give me a few random spike weeks when I need it. Jonathan Brooks could end up being a league winner after week 4 through 6 when he kind of starts getting his feet wet and takes over the backfield, which I really think is the inevitable for this year. The next two guys we're going to be talking about are built on receiving. Now, the receiving gives them a floor and it gives them a clear role, which I outlined earlier. Finding the backs who have a clear, high value role in either the receiving game or the goal line back are huge for fantasy value. So the first guy we're going to talk about is Kenny Gainwell, running back 33, currently going off the board at about 98.5 overall, 9th, 10th round turn, right about there. Now, here's my thing with Kenneth Gainwell. He finished RB16 overall last year, and yet he goes off double that in the later rounds. What about his situation has changed that much? He wasn't the lead back in Pittsburgh. He's not the lead back on the Bucs. If anything, he is on a better offense with the Buccaneers than he was in Pittsburgh. Now, do we know what his role is going to be? No, but they got rid of Rachaad White to bring him in. They went after him on purpose to have that receiving back because Bucky Irving continues to be inconsistent and injury prone. Now, I know we just talked about J.K. Dobbins and you don't want to predict injury, but it is something that you have to take into account. The Bucs offense projects to be very good and significantly better than the Steelers were last year. And so if Bucky gets hurt or misses any time, or even if he just loses any of the day-to-day groundwork to Kenneth Gainwell is going to have a huge jump in production. I mean, you can already look from last year, and in the second half of the season, he finished as a top 12 running back in like 6 out of his 8 games. Why is he being drafted at RB33? If he does even a fraction of that, he's pretty much guaranteed a top 20 finish. This is a guy who can get 4 to 6 receptions a game and 50 yards easy, and that's on the low end. So you're looking at a guy who is a 10-point per game running back off the rip. And again, if Bucky gets hurt, loses any work, or if Gainwell just plays better in a better offense, he's going to be a viable RB2. And you can get him at an RB3 or 4 value. So the guys who he goes around, Jacoby Myers, who is kind of the odd man out in terms of upside in the Jags offense, and Michael Wilson, who is in a Cardinals offense that projects to be extremely dysfunctional and unknown outside of Trey McBride and Jeremiah Love. The only player who goes around him that I do kind of like is Quentin Johnston, but Johnston's ADP is still a few spots ahead of his. So realistically, Kenneth Gainwell, you are giving up very little in terms of the wide receivers around him to get him. And again, he finished top 16 last year. Go get the solid running back 2 with weekly receiving upside. The second guy we're going to talk about is in a slightly different situation because he comes into a backfield that is a lot more ambiguous, but he also is not coming off as hot of a year. And I'm talking about Rachaad White on the Washington Commanders, running back 37, 108th overall. Now, again, similar to Kenneth Gainwell, he has primarily made his money in the receiving realm of fantasy, which again gives him a decent floor. He does come into a very ambiguous backfield in the Commanders, which is one of the reasons I think he is such a great value. Now, again, he has proven to get receiving work in Tampa Bay. He finished RB32 last year, but previously he finished RB22 and RB4. And even that RB32 finish last year, again, he's going off the board at 37. So at the very least, you are getting him at what would appear to be his lowest of low points. And again, he's on a Commanders team that has no clear RB1. Bill didn't impress in year one. Now, we do see the second year leap a lot of the time, but if I'm looking at the Commanders' backfield, I'm not taking Bill Krosky-Merritt, who could he maybe take the majority of the ground carries? Yes, but who cares? It does not matter because PPR is so insanely valuable with running backs who catch balls. That's where I think Rachaad White has so much value. If he catches 4 to 6 passes a game on a team that doesn't have great receiving options and a quarterback who is coming off an injury, if he catches 4 to 6 passes a game, that gives you a floor of about 8 to 10 points without any rushing work. And again, the ambiguous backfield, if he can take over and get some more of that groundwork and take it from Bill, he's going to be in a similar position that Gainwell would be, where all of a sudden you're seeing this guy drafted in like the 11th round producing at a running back 2 clip. And the guys going around him, the 2 closest receivers to him are Jaden Reed and Josh Downs. Now, Josh Downs, I do like pending the Alec Pierce injury, whatever that ends up being, because right now it's a whole bunch of hullabaloo. But again, you're getting a receiving back on a backfield with no clear RB1. And more than that, they don't have any good receiving options outside of Terry McLaurin. So if Jaden Daniels wants to throw, he has to throw it to somebody. And I think that could be Rachaad White. And I think that is where you're going to get so much value from him. Again, going off in the 11th round. So if 4 weeks goes by and he's not doing much, drop him. That's what's the beautiful thing with some of these guys who are going in the double-digit rounds. You have no commitment. And so you might as well draft the guy who has a chance to produce at a running back 2 level for half the cost of what an RB2 goes for earlier in the draft. All right. Our last and final player who, up to this point, I've given you pretty late guys. I think the highest drafted guy was David Montgomery at about RB24. Now, that was on purpose because, again, the later rounds is where you can see the upside case for them to outperform and where you don't really have to pay a high cost for it. But this last one is a guy who I think has a chance to go from an RB20, RB2 range to a top 10 running back because he did it before on a weekly basis. I'm talking about Mr. Concussion, Mr. CTE, Mr. Crackhead, Cam Skattebo. If you've ever wanted to draft the crackhead on the 7-Eleven corner, that's basically him. I mean, this dude runs like a madman, slams his head into walls, does backflips after season-ending knee injuries. He is a literal psychopath. And currently, he goes off at RB19 or 44th overall. He's about a 4th or 5th rounder at that cost. Now, my thing with Cam Skattebo and why I like him as a value even at RB19 is because he averaged 19 points per game as the starter last year before he got hurt, which would, over a season, put him in the top 10. He had a top 22 finish in all 6 games. So if you're doing the math there, he's projected RB19. RB22 is 3 spots behind that, and that's where he finished in all 6 games that he played the full game and had the full workload. And of those, he had 3 top 12 finishes, and of those 3 top 12, 2 of them were top 5. So you're looking at a guy who you can get as a later RB2 option who can give you weekly top 5 upside. And he has great receiving floor. He averaged 3.5 targets per game over those 6 games. He has shown he can take the volume both at ASU and last year. And they didn't add anybody this year. Who do they have? Tyrone Tracy? You're telling me if you watch Tyrone Tracy and Cam Skattebo both play last year, you would really say, give me Tyrone Tracy. No, you're taking Cam Skattebo because he gives you just so much elite playmaking in so many different ways. Pass blocking, running, and receiving. He does it all. At ASU, he played quarterback at certain points, I'm pretty sure. He was 9th overall in points per game, including week 1 and 8 last year, when he played less than 20% of the snaps. So again, projecting out his week 1 through 8 from last year, he would have finished 9th overall. And that was including 2 essentially nothing weeks when he played less than 20% of snaps. If I told you that Cam Skattebo would not get hurt, he would be an instant top 15, top 12 pick. The injury and his play style are what concern people, which I do get. Again, he is a literal psychopath. The man is crazy. I do not understand him. But the upside is so clear. He wasn't a top 10. He was a top 10 running back last year. If he can get back to that and do it over a whole season, you're looking at an RB1 who you got at a late RB2 while still targeting high-quality receivers. Some of the guys going around him are Jalen Waddle, Terry McLaurin, and Devontae Adams. Now, again, this is not an anti-case. Every player has a place in one team or another. But again, are you really going to say Terry McLaurin can finish top 10 at the position? Same with Devontae Adams. Same with Jalen Waddle. No. You're going to take the guy who proved that he could be top 10 and is young and had his season derailed by injury, and who is only going to get better with a new head coach and new system. So that's all I got. Those are my 6 favorite running back values in this year's draft. Now, we are still a month out from draft days, and so this can all change. So please don't come at me when all of a sudden Cam Scadaboo goes up to RB17 in a month, and you're like, well, you said that he was going to be RB19. I don't care. I'm doing this right now, guys, who I like at this very moment. And so with that, we will catch you next time. We are going to be going over the wide receiver values and quarterback tight end values I like later this week, and so tune in for those videos. See ya.